All right, let's kick off our first evening with Artifacts. Good evening, everyone. My name is Heather Nickerson, and I'm CEO and co-founder of Artifacts. We are thrilled you're here to join us tonight. We're very excited to have with us Matt Paxton, who, as you know, is the Emmy-nominated TV star of Legacy List with Matt Paxton, and also with 15 years with Hoarders, and the author of Keep the Memories, Lose the Stuff. Ellen and I will be interviewing him this evening. He'll be sharing some of his most favorite memories, stories, and also behind the scenes experiences with both the TV show and writing his book. So before we jump into grilling Matt, I'll have him say a quick hello, and then off we go. Thank you again for joining us this evening. We look forward to interacting with you in Q&A afterwards. Ellen, over to you.
Hi, everybody. Ellen Goodwin, co-founder of Artifacts, and I am just happy you're all here. And here we go. Matt, you want to say hello before I start grilling you?
Yeah, hello. That was a great intro. I'm Matt. I think most people watching probably know who I am. I have spent the last 20 plus years cleaning out people's houses and exploring stuff, both personally and professionally. And I love my job, and I've really settled into it in the last 2 years, ironically falling in love with a minimalist. And so that has changed a lot of my view on stuff. So I love it. I mean, I've gotten to help extreme hoarders, and then helped aging Americans downsize for the last 20 years, and then did it myself last year. And that's a whole different thing when you're working on your stuff.
And Matt, you did it in spectacular fashion, right? How many people and how many square feet are you squeezing down to?
So we are a minimalist family of 9. We live in a 2,200 square foot home. So it's a blended family. My wife had 4 kids and I had 3, and they live with us full time. So I actually went from a 4,000 square foot home with 4 people to a 2,200 square foot home with 9 people and a dog. So it's pretty tight, and honestly, it made us, it really made me, I mean, these new minimalist rules really made me put value, emotional value, and space value on stuff, because we have no space. And so it's really made us, decide, do we really need something or not?
Which is a great segue into how life changes. So let's kick it off and talk with folks. I want to dive a little bit into the TV version of you. And specifically, I want to talk about, 15 years of Hoarders, guest appearances there. 4 seasons of Legacy List with Matt Paxton. A lot has changed in this time period. And I want to talk about, get the kind of behind the scenes on what has changed from Hoarders to the Legacy List.
And I will invite anyone watching, if you can, I think we can put things in the chat as well if we need to. So don't, if I'm missing especially on the behind the scenes question, go for it. So I got into reality TV very early. Basically, Real World is the only thing, like the MTV was really the only thing, doing a lot of, no one really knew about reality TV yet when I got into it. It was 16, 17 years ago. But first, let's say this. I'm on a TV show that puts a mental disorder on television for entertainment. There is an ethical dilemma, like right from the beginning, right? And I always want to start with that, because a lot of people do not like my show, and I don't blame them, because it's really hard to watch. But what I will say is we have come a long way, and we've definitely helped people. Oh, chat is disabled in case we want to answer it. We're
going to see if we can fix that. You can keep going.
All right. So for me, it was super important that we always give the person therapy, right? And so, we have really helped people didn't, basically you had pack rats, and everyone had a great aunt that had too much stuff, right? And I grew up cleaning my aunt's house, actually. And that's how I got into hoarding cleanup, doing hoarding cleanups. But when we did the show, all the professionals got together and said we have to pay for the therapy. And so we actually give a year of therapy for every person that is on Hoarders. They get up to a year. We pay the therapist directly. They are actually recommended by the therapist that is on staff. We always have a therapist on staff when we're cleaning. And in my professional career outside of TV, I will never clean a hoarded house if they don't agree to go to therapy, because the math proves that they absolutely will not stay clean. The stat on that is if they use my methods of hoarding and clean out and they go to therapy, 60% success rate in my career of some way of staying clean. If they do not go to therapy, guess how low that number gets? It's 0. 100% failure if they don't go to therapy. Hoarding is caused by a disorder. Something bad has happened, some kind of trauma, mainly. And it's usually physical abuse, sexual abuse, it's death, divorce. There's lots of different triggers, but at the end of the day, it is trauma. And they're looking for happiness and self-worth in their stuff. And so we have proven over 16 years of thousands of cleanouts that if they don't go to therapy and deal with that trauma, they will not stay clean. And so I'm very proud to say on the TV side, they back that up as well. And the network still pays for that today.
That's pretty impressive.
Still.
How do they do that? And how long do they do that follow-up with your families?
And now let's put a asterisk on this. The family has to show up, and they don't always do that. And so that's why we don't give the family cash, because if we gave family like a voucher for it, they'd be like, peace out, see you later. They would take the cash and leave. And it's usually like 10 grand. I mean, it's a lot of money, and but they pay the therapist directly. And it's usually, in this, after 16 seasons, you start to go to the same cities. And so we have a lot of, we know a lot of the therapists that are good. And they just, therapies, let's talk about what's changed. Therapy's changed in 15 years.
I was going to say,
it used to be
out there, right? This is
it used to be. It used to be like, cognitive behavioral CPD. You'd sit on the couch and tell us your feelings. Well, believe it or not, the more extreme TV has forced our hoarding stories to go more extreme. And so, like the first season, we had a nice little lady that wouldn't even. Her house is clean. I'll be honest. I mean, we were in there. We talked about a pumpkin seed for an hour, and why she couldn't let go of pumpkin seeds. And now you got to have 1 million pounds of trash, and it's a 10-day clean out, and it's really extreme. So TV has forced our coverage of hoarding to get more extreme. But here's the irony. The therapy that works for extreme hoarding is not what works for traditional CPD. You don't sit. I mean, if someone's hoarding 300 dead cats, they're not going to sit on their couch and talk about their feelings. That, we're past that. And that's actually this therapy. Oh, what is it? It's like a RFM, not RFMD, RFM. It's a rapid eye. I can look it up, but someone here will know what it is. Someone will type it in here in a minute. But it's it's almost like a strobe light. And EMDR, there it is. I knew they would. Okay, I was just waiting for it. I knew they would. So EMDR has become the most successful therapy for extreme hoarding. And because it actually helps them access trauma and triggers that they may not necessarily even know that they experienced. And so it's really, really interesting. So the therapy has changed so much. And a lot of our people now, a lot of times I say, hey, before you can go to therapy, just go volunteer for 6 months. Get involved. And I'm like, what do you mean? I'm like, actually, you just need positivity. You don't need medication. You just need to get out of your house and you need to volunteer somewhere. And we found that volunteering is done really, really well. And it's crazy. I mean, it's funny, but that took us 10 years. I mean, when we started hoarding, they didn't even believe. I mean, hoarding was a subset of, my dog just showed up. Sorry. Hello, dog. Hoarding was a subset of, what is the word I'm looking for?
Obsessive compulsive disorder.
Yeah, OCD. Thank you. It was a subset of OCD. It wasn't even listed in the DSM-5. And of course, now it is. And so I'm proud of what the show has done, but it is still putting a mental disorder on television for entertainment. And I've gone back and forth on that. Then?
What did you take with you into Legacy List from those learnings over at Hoarders? Because you're saying what you didn't want to have to bring out.
I didn't want to deal with the really, really intense stuff. I was at the same time that I was doing hoarding, I was also helping all these really cool ladies clean out their houses. And I was hearing these incredible stories of one lady was telling me about how she was in a concentration camp and a American soldier comes around the corner and opens it up. And she's like, we thought we were dead. And then we were freed an hour later. And she's like, this 80-year-old lady is telling me the story. And she's like, I could pick this guy out of a lineup today. And she was, 12 or 13 when it happened. I was hearing all these amazing stories. And I was like, man, there's got to be a place for these positive stories, because TV from, I mean, early 2000s to now, it got super negative. And I was just like, I want to be super positive. And so I'll never forget, it was when Hillary Clinton lost the election that night, I said, I was also on the biggest hoard I'd ever cleaned up. We took 1 million pounds out of a house in North Carolina. And I was like, I had 50 guys there help me clean up. It was this like army of a clean out. And we had 40 dumpsters going. I literally had a yard where I had at least 10 trucks in the yard all day. And I remember just thinking, man, how much bigger can this get? And am I really doing good anymore? And when Trump won, I was just like, and I'm not trying to get political. I love everybody. But I just had made the decision the next morning. I was like, I'm going to be positive, and I'm going to go sell the show about positive aging Americans. And I thought, how easy could that be? Like, I'll have a show in a week. And every network turned it down. Every single network in the country turned it down. And Bravo said, were there any attractive granddaughters that would argue over the stuff? They didn't want me for the show, but they liked the concept of it. They're like, we love Matt, but not for this show. And keep in mind, the name of the show was Legacy List with Matt Paxton. And they're like, but not Matt. And are there attractive granddaughters that would fight? And I was just like, oh, dude, it made me just dig down even more. So I spent a year getting the show ready and getting it ready. And then when we met with PBS, it was like, oh, this is the one place we can do it. And I was really, really proud. And of course, here we are 2 years later, 5 years later, we have 2 Emmy nominations. And I believe for 2 reasons. One, TV forced negativity. And I knew that if everyone's going negative, if I go positive, people will see it. And then secondly, I didn't focus on the financial value of items. I focused on TV is so transactional. And I just said, man, I just want the emotional. That's it. I just want the emotional stories. So I had to even fight like our co-production company. I mean, my partners on the show, they kept saying, well, what's this worth? Can we get a price tag in there? I was like, no, I don't want price tags. I don't care about that.
You had to say, this is not Antiques Roadshow.
This is not. I was like, there's already a really good show. It's called Antiques Roadshow. We're 20 years behind them. There's no point trying to beat them. Like, they're great. Mm-hmm. And everything was transactional. I just said, no, we're going to go emotional. And because I learned in the field, that's what mattered. When I'm helping people clean up, they didn't really care what something was worth. They just wanted to tell me about who gave it to them.
Well, Matt, it's good that you go there because in this pivot point of the value and the emotional and the story behind it, when we talked with Lark Mason from Antiques Roadshow, and his bottom line was people need to understand their motivation behind why they have something and why they want to get rid of it if they decide to, right? So are they doing it for financial reasons because they're financially strapped or they want to reinvest somewhere else? Are they doing it for emotional reasons they're ready to let go? And that's where with Legacy List, you've gotten into the storytelling, right? So can you kind of unravel like where that has gone into the 4 seasons?
Yeah, and I want to back up a little bit. One thing people don't know, I've had 1 million jobs, and people are like, how have you had so many jobs in this year? I'm only 47. After, my dad, my stepdad, and both my grandfathers died when I was 24. And I talk about that a lot. But what people don't know is I quickly volunteered at a camp called Comfort Zone Camp. It's a grief camp for kids that have lost their parents. And these are kids that have, I had one year it was a summer camp all week long. All 10 boys in my bunk had lost their dads to drive-by shootings. Right? These were all gang-related kids. And this is like a tough life, right? And our therapy was taking these kids out to have fun. And then we'd sneak therapy in them, but we'd get them to tell stories about their dads. And it turned out all these kids had lots of the same stories. And so, this is before I was on TV. I was actually just cleaning houses during the week, and then I would go volunteer on the weekends all around the country, helping these young kids. And of course, dealing with my own issues at the same time, obviously. And it ended up just being an amazing, magical place. But I kept learning, tell the stories. And so I did that, when I was out cleaning. I would basically work with my aging Americans and my hoarders the same way that I was working with these kids on the weekends. And so I now have forgotten your question, but the whole point was that there was a science behind this, and I did it for 5 years. I mean, almost every other weekend for almost 5 years. That's all I did.
Well, I think you went to the root of the stories, right? Because that's what you're trying to do in Legacy List. You bring forward all these stories and it reveals the positive emotional value of what's happening and why they're
I mean, you know, and I've written 2 books. I've helped thousands of families, and I kept finding out that these positive stories were always, it was really important that, you know, they would always tell these stories. And so I was like, okay, I'm obviously a guy that talks too much or a lot, and I needed to listen, which is not my like strength, right? Like I tell a lot of stories, but the older I got and the more I would help, I really, really started finding out that, man, I just want to hear these stories. And then once you figure that out, you just shut up and listen. And it made TV really easy because I'm not the star of any show. I'm just the narrator to get you to this person that I'm helping this week. They're the star, whether it be on Hoarders, whether it be Legacy List. I'm just a curious person in their home asking questions. And now that's like the easiest job in the world.
So Matt, talking about storytelling, sometimes people feel very daunted, like, oh my gosh, I've got to tell a story. It's got to be perfect, or it's got to be this long evolved, you know, history of my life or my stuff. And I think people oftentimes underappreciate the value of their own story. What's the best way that you found, or what's the best catalyst to get people to open up and start sharing those stories if they're a little hesitant at first?
Okay. Everybody thinks their stories are not good and they're interested in everybody else's stories. Guess what? That's why reality TV is really good, because we're watching, you know, most of your favorite reality TV show is people that you would totally not give 5 minutes of your time to in real life, right? If you met them, like, I wouldn't hang out with those people, but I'm going to watch 25 episodes of them on a snowy day, right? And I will say that your story is amazing. And I'm talking to whoever's listening. Your story is incredible, and you just need different people to hear it, right? And so I tell everybody to do it. Now, how do I get started? I do these things called story starters, where it's really hard for people. People don't like to really tell their people. So either if you're like me, you love to brag and you talk all the time, or you don't at all, right? Like, I got 7 kids. Heather's heard that, I don't know, 1 million times already. And I just found out tonight she's got 5 kids. Like, you know, it's crazy. Some people tell stories, some people don't. But what I would tell you is start small, believe it or not. Ask somebody what's their first job and how much do they get paid. 2 separate questions. What's your first job? How much do you get paid? Ask a stranger. It's a half an hour answer, just so you know. It starts a question right away. And then, sorry, my dog is going in and out here. So you start very simply. What's your first job? What'd you get paid? Who was your best friend in elementary school? That's my third question. What was your first love? And by the way, it's often the woman. You're asking an 80-year-old guy that question. It's often the woman sitting right next to him. Or who was your first kiss? That's always one of my favorite questions. You know, and then like, did you play a sport in high school? And then, like, I mean, I asked one guy the other day, I was like, did you play a sport in high school? He's like, yeah, dude, we didn't go to high school. We lived on a farm. Like, we were 8th grade. He's like, none of us went to high school, man. We had a farm to run. I'm like, what? And then they start to, and then it starts going. So the word that matters there is curious. And that's why Legacy List is a successful show, because we've learned to be just curious and ask questions. And the stuff, and that's one reason I love Artifacts. I mean, the stuff is just the jumping part of the story, and it gets people going. And that's why I've actually, obviously, it's why I got involved with you guys, because I needed a way to record all these stories, and both physically, you know, visually, like just a flat picture, and then I needed the audio and the video. And because I had so many families where I'm just like, if you would just tell these stories, people would want the items. And so I guess we should talk about that real quick. How did I get involved with y'all? It is. Okay, so Marty McNabb, hey girl, what's up? I didn't know Marty was up there.
I was going to say, hey Matt, before you get into us, which we'd love to hear about us, of course, but before we do that, let's take a quick reversal into, there's a question that came in that I think we should, it'll give context to what you're artifacting, which is, why are you considered a minimalist? So tell us a little bit about what happened a couple of years ago and what your lifestyle.
Yeah. Okay.
How do you define that?
I had a great life. I will say this: divorce was a good thing in my life. My wife and I, my first wife and I, we broke up. We were not a good couple. It was actually better for us and our kids to break up. And so I was a single dad. I had the kids full time. I was making money, but I had been on the road. I had been traveling, so I wasn't around a lot. And so I started buying a lot of stuff for my kids because I felt guilty that I wasn't around. And then I had to work more to make more money. And I was just never around. It was all about working and buying stuff and making up for not being present. And I got this book called Minimalist for Families. And it was a really good book, and it had a lot of expert advice about just working less and buying less stuff and being more present in life. And the whole theory of minimalism is you actually don't spend your money and your time on stuff, you spend it on experiences. And so less stuff, less time to keep up with it, less time to, I thought how much time I was inventory cleaning and organizing my stuff. Right? And so this book blew me away. And so I went online to thank this person who wrote the book. And it ended up being my now second wife, Zoe. She wrote the book, blew my mind. We started talking. She goes, I don't have a TV. I don't know who you are. And, I loved that answer. I thought that was amazing. And she shows up at my TED Talk about stuff, believe it or not. That's how we met. We met at my TED Talk, believe it or not. But long story short, she's a devout minimalist. I mean, like, she's converted me. I have 6 shirts. They're all the same. I have 3 pair of jeans. They're all the same. I mean, we just don't fill our life with stuff. And we focus on experiences. And sometimes that's just dinner. Minimalism is not about not having anything. It's about really, having the things that matter, that help you really live the life you want. And what I think I'm lucky enough to really know is that, like, I've gotten to work with extreme hoarders, and you can see obviously how that stuff really hurt them. I've worked with a lot of aging Americans, and now I am a minimalist. And I mean, you don't get like a badge. There's not like a test you take and you're like, okay, you've reached only 6 items now. You're you're a minimalist. But it's more of a philosophy on life of living with less. And I will tell you, there is definitely more life with less stuff. And it's a concept you have to buy into. I mean, it's funny. My 10-year-old's birthday is next Tuesday, and he hasn't asked for anything yet. He's like, Dad, I don't really want anything. He's like, I'm going on a trip this summer. Like, he just wants to go on trips. And so it's funny. My kids are now 3 years into it, and they basically declutter themselves every week. I mean, they're going through their stuff, trying to have less stuff because they don't want to spend any time cleaning up. And so I'll say it's a philosophy of is there more in life with less stuff?
So has that shaped how you've approached artifacts, both personally and professionally?
Definitely. So when I artifact, like, I probably artifact a lot less than most of your users, right? Like, I tend to obviously lean towards my legacy list. I put my most important items, and I still need a place to document it and share it. I was playing around on Artifacts today, and like, there's people that, like, I think you call them like super artifactors, or I mean, like, there's people that do a lot, and you can get lost in that rabbit hole. By the way, I love it. It's like a positive, it's like a positive TikTok, like, I got lost in a rabbit hole looking at stuff, and I was like, oh my gosh, like, how crazy is this that I'm able to see it? And hold 1 second. Hey buddy, I am literally working right now. You're going to need to go. Okay. I'll be back in a few minutes. Okay. I'm sorry, buddy. No, gotta go. Go back. Guys, I'm sorry. I am a dad first. Sorry.
We're
hoarding kids. Yeah.
This is life.
I'm sorry.
Yeah,
this is life. Why don't you guys say something really quick here? I'll be right back. Yeah.
We will.
So it is life, and I will admit, so I tend to be more on the minimalist side of things with artifacts. And that really, for me, my journey with that came from my mother and her passing, and having all the stuff and not knowing the meaning, and really knowing that my daughter, I want her to have the things that matter most to us, memories, and that's really what inspired kind of, my, I think, evolution with stuff and experiences and how we live our lives.
And I'm back. Sorry, guys.
No, back to, I was sharing a little bit of my whole experience with more on the minimalist and the things, although I do have a husband who tends to be more maximalist. So it's a very neat version of the two.
Well, I'm making act like it was easy. All right. So when I was writing a book, I was writing my book, Keep the Memories, Lose the Stuff. And that's when I decided to move to Atlanta. And so I was moving a town of, I mean, I've been in Richmond, Virginia, 47 years. 47 years. 46 years I lived in that town. And I didn't like, I've helped, I don't know, a couple thousand families. And I've given lots of tips, lots of top 10 lists, done all that stuff. And it's all great until it's your attic. And I'm going through my dad's stuff. I'm going through my grandpa's stuff. I'm going through my stuff. And I started to lose it. And I remember I called my now wife and I was like, I don't know if I can do this. And I was a week away from moving. And it was really easy when I was giving strangers advice. It was really hard when it was my stuff. And I remember thinking two things. Like one time I thought like, should I even move? Like, I don't know that I want to give up all of this. And so I called my fiance at the time. I was like, I don't know if I can do this. And she goes, well, your future family and me are in Atlanta. She goes,
I love you, but
yeah, she goes, I love you. She goes, you're gonna have to figure that out. She goes, I hope you have a happy life up there in Richmond with all your stuff. And she goes, let me know what you're gonna do. And she hung up. And I was like, oh my God, like what am I gonna do? And I obviously ended up moving. And I made that leap. And I tell a lot of people when you're downsizing, you have to have something to move towards, right? Like there has to be positivity on the other side, or it really is a hard decision. But the second part was I had to call AARP. I was writing this book with AARP, and I had to call them and be like, hey guys, this book sucks, by the way. Like it's not going to be good. And I was lucky that both Penguin Random House and AARP supported me, and they were like, okay, like you can start over, but it's still due on February 15th. But if you want to hustle down and change it, go for it. And so I changed the book completely. And what I did the last 2 weeks of moving, I only have focused on my emotions. And every hour I would talk into my phone, like, what are the emotional hurdles? Where am I saying? And I stopped doing tips. I stopped doing all these tricks about how to get rid of stuff. And I just said, okay, why am I so sad? What am I missing? What am I missing out on? What am I losing? And it really made me, before I became a minimalist, it made me realize like, dude, I was putting too much value in the stuff and not enough into the emotions behind that stuff.
I think that leads in really nicely to the next question we hear all the time, but like, why do you think we hold on to that stuff? Like, is it emotion? Is it memory? Like what do you think is that key driver?
Yeah, my experience is people hold on to stuff because of the people attached to it, right? It's not really, no one cares about plastic or wood or, maybe some diamonds, but like for the most part, it's not really the stuff. A plate's a plate, right? Utilitarian wise, it's pretty basic. We hold on to it because someone we loved gave it to us, or there's a memory with it. I mean, I have this ring. I talk about this ring all the time. I don't know, it's probably worth $1,000 or $2,000 money, if that. But my dad gave it to me literally the night he died. And I love this ring. And I talk about it in my book. I talk about it everywhere. And people now come up to me when they meet, like, do you have your dad's ring on? And they want to see it, right? And I'm like, what? Because they've heard crazy stories about my dad. I love this ring because my dad was crazy, right? And he was a legend in our town. And he taught me to dream and taught me to be who I am. And that is why I love this ring, not because it's gold, right? And so I just remind everybody, like, everything we have, it's because you have a lot of emotions and feelings for the people before you. And so I don't know, like season 10 of Hoarders, I started coming in instead of, I even changed the way I communicated with Hoarders. I'd be like, oh man, because the rest of the world's saying, you're disgusting, you're gross, what's wrong with you? And I was like, man, you love a lot of people. Let's start talking about those people. And they're like, what? And I didn't get mad at them. I just said, hey, you clearly have a lot of love in your life. Let's talk about it. And when I changed that positioning, I found that we were more successful because one, it was positive, and two, we focused on the memories and the love, not necessarily how gross they were. And that the communication positioning, I say it was absolutely one of the best things we ever did. We pivoted.
Completely agree with you, Matt. Like it really is, like thinking back to like my own journey with my mother, it's the things that I've kept are the things that I have the stories for, the emotion for, things that I know that she cared so deeply about. Like you can feel the love in those objects. And it really is, there's, I think, a lot of sentimentality emotion, memories, like all tied into those things that we do, like, our own legacy list, like what is that? I love to know.
I have to turn the question back on you guys. Actually, y'all started this company. Like, tell us, why did you, what's your history with, like, what, not maybe history, what's your experience with stuff? Like, what have y'all found with your vast careers and backgrounds, and now what you're doing? Like, why do you think people hold on to things?
Yeah, so great question. Our backgrounds are really different. I'd say we both have a lot of personal experiences with the world of stuff, but we're new to the profession of stuff. Both Ellen and I were analysts for Central Intelligence Agency. So not the usual CIA you always hear about, but that's the one down in DC. And then we both had careers in the private sector. I focused on security and privacy and really helping people protect their privacy and their personal information. And then about almost 6 years ago now, my mother, she passed away, and it was very sudden, very unexpected. She was young. She was only 65 years old. And myself and my siblings, we, you always think you're going to have more time. And with her, being 65, we never thought like, oh, gee, mom's not going to be here tomorrow. But that was pretty much the case we were faced with. And then I very quickly realized it wasn't so much like, yes, there was the pain of missing my mother. She was no longer there, like no one to ask, the questions to, or double check those family recipes. Like she was our family keeper, and she kept it all in her head. So having to go through her stuff after the fact, like the estate plan was taken care of, will, taxes, all that was relatively, quote unquote, simple. But it was, what do you do with the actual tangible stuff? And my siblings and I really wanted to keep the things that mattered most to her, that would tell her story for future generations. But we really had no idea, she had this crystal vase in her bedroom and she never used it. Was it because she loved it so much, it was so cherished, she was afraid of breaking it if she ever used it? Or, did Aunt Mildred give it to her and she really didn't like Aunt Mildred? Like we had no way of knowing. And I actually had a moment where I was, like literally sitting on her closet floor, like crying. So I was like, what would mom have wanted us to keep? And I, again, had no way of knowing. And I was like, if only these objects could talk. And that was one of those, I think, epiphanies where there's gotta be a better way to do this. And that was really the genesis of kind of what became Artifacts. But at the very beginning, it was the goal of ensuring that, anyone, anywhere would never be in the same situation, like never be surrounded by stuff and not knowing, what is it, like, why does it matter? Like, why should you keep it? Or even should you keep it? Like there's all those questions and you go through something like that. So that was kind of my personal journey with stuff. Ellen, feel free to jump in with your side too.
Well, I've shared a lot. So if any of you have seen the article on our website, I did 5 things about that I learned artifacting with my mother. I went home to Wisconsin. We spent 4 days together, maybe 5 was too long, artifacting. And what was interesting was, for me, the biggest takeaway, there were things on my list that I wanted to ask her about that she's like, I don't know. I got it at a garage sale, like whatever, I'm just going to get rid of it. And I was like, no, I want it. And I think that was kind of one of those, if you don't tell the stories, how do you know what to get rid of, what to sell, what to pass down? You don't know the answer, right? And even now I just realized I'm holding on to this little thing. Heather said we both worked at the Central Intelligence Agency, yes, the spy agency, and people would go on trips and they would always bring you stuff, right? So you felt bad that you didn't get to go to Malaysia. And so they bring you a little trinket to say, I'm sorry, I was thinking of you. And I still have that. And I think about people all the time. So I feel like I'm surrounded by friends and I have photos around my home. Like most of my stuff has memories, and I felt compelled, if I get hit by a bus tomorrow, my daughter will know me better. I'm a person, right? So like Matt, a lot of people talk about, I'm glad that you're artifacting, right? Because you're not old. People are like, well, it's for old people. It's an end of life thing. No, we are all alive. We all have stuff. We all have histories. We all have memories. We all need histories. And I think that for me, Artifacts, I want to bring that to people of all ages because we all have histories worth sharing and telling.
Oh man, I'm doing videos on a lot of my items because I actually want my kids to have videos of me with hair. Like, my grandkids. So this is important for me, and I think people listening. Like my dad, my stepdad, both my grandfather's dad died when I was 24 and going into my 25th year. And so my dad was 52 when he died. So my I've one girl, 6 boys. They don't know anyone that raised me except my mom. And like I'm telling stories nonstop. And what I love by recording these stories is they're going to hear stories like kids I don't even like my grandkids. I mean, I hope God willing I'll be there. But like they're going to see me right now telling these stories about stuff I did 15 years ago or 10 years ago, and I'm going to be 80. Like I'm going to be asleep on the couch, you know. They're going to be like, that guy did that cool stuff. You know?
Yes, the audio and video, Matt, are so cool. My dad actually artifacted the last voice message he got from my grandfather. It's the last audio we have of him. It was him calling to wish him a happy birthday. And it's really, really cool. So he shared it with my siblings, one of whom is actually on the call and probably hating me for bringing this up, but he did, right? And just recently I went, and we're going to talk about this in a couple of weeks, I digitized. You'd be so proud of me. I read about it in your book and I really thought about it. And I talked with another person who's done, I think she might even be here. Hazel Thornton has a great book on this. And I went and digitized, and I got this video of me when I was 5. And I realized, oh, that's where my daughter gets it from. So I actually created an artifact of me at 5 doing this,
super cool
song where I quack like a duck, and I did my daughter at 5, and they're together in an artifact. And I tell her in this artifact, I wrote it to her, and I say, that's where you get it from, dear one. You're lucky.
That's super cool. I love the tool. I mean, I think people should know how I got involved with y'all. I mean, I literally was thinking of creating an app like this, and then somebody at NASM, one of the people that runs NASM, they were like, "No, that's already created. You need to meet these women." And I was like, "What?" And I started looking. I was like, "Oh my god, this is actually better than anything I would have made." And then I just started using it, and I love it.
Can't beat them, join them.
Yeah, totally. Well, I mean. I've found myself, my role now, I used to be such a, I had a big cleaning company and was in the field every day. And now I'm more of just an educator and more of a cheerleader for the industry, honestly. I mean, and I love it. I mean, I'm really lucky that people will show up when I'm there and want to hear what I have to say. But like at the end of the day, I mean, my job now is just to tell everybody about all the options, all the different books, everything. I mean, I want everybody just to get out there and share their stories, because I get the joy every day. Like my email is bombarded with stories. People see my TV show and they're like, "Oh, you got to hear about my grandma," and it's really cool. And I get to see all these amazing stories, and I want everyone to not only tell the stories, but I want them to hear them. And so if I could sum up my entire last 5-year career, it's just tell the stories, tell the stories, tell the stories. The rest of it will work itself out. Like,
Matt, what would you say to people say, no, it's not the stories. You need to find joy. You need to do Marie Kondo's way or this.
Yes.
Way.
Okay. Great question. A lot of people say that. They're like, well, prove it. Give me the stats. Right. Well, I've got 20 years of stats. I'm one of the people that has the stats. What I found is when there are a lot of methods. The Swedish, if you look at book sales, right? Like Marie Kondo and Swedish death cleaning have destroyed any of us. There's a lot of good authors on the call right now, by the way. And we've all written what we believe to be, our Marie Kondo book, right? But at the end of the day, we've all given it our best. Those 2 books did really well, and those methods work for some people. They don't work for all people. I would say same thing with weight loss. Like not every method works for everybody. I just want you to get healthy. So whatever method works for you, go for it. Like there's enough to go around for all of us. If Sparking Joy works for you, great. My 2 main audiences, hoarders and seniors, everything brings them joy. That's why they're in the trouble that they're in, and so I had to do something different. And for me, it was tell the stories. And I have heard the argument, well, it's going to make me want to keep everything. And I'll tell you, that's not the case. What has happened is my biggest method is create your legacy list. Like the first thing, so Hazel just wrote, if everything is special, then nothing is special. I want you to put the top 5 or 6 items in your house. That's what a legacy list is. It tells your family's history. It tells the story. And what I found is when you'll be surprised. Like when you start creating that list, it needs to be under 10 items. You can't go over 10. That's just too many, right? For your legacy list, which is the most 10 important items in the house. But there'll be 3 or 4 people that are predominantly on that list. And you'll tell those stories. For me, it's my dad, my grandpa, and my mom, right? And my mom's still alive, by the way. She's probably on here under a fake name. She always comes in to hear what stories I sell, and then she will start to tell me where I'm not accurate on some of these stories. And but like I tell so many stories of my dad, and what happens is, like, I talk about the ring, I talk about all these things, and so by the time I got to the back of my dad's house and I'm going through like buckets of nails and books and all these papers, I had already celebrated him so much that it was easier to go through the things that didn't matter as much. And so what I'm telling you, if you celebrate up front, create that legacy list, tell the story, tell the story, tell the story, what happens is on the back end, you're so proud of that person. You've celebrated them to the proper amount. You've artifacted everything that matters to this family. Then you just, oh, that's a neat shirt. Take a picture, tell the story on Artifacts, and you can donate it away. The story lives on. That's one thing that I love this tool so much, is that the story will live on and the memory lives on and the person lives on. I mean, and you don't need the item to do that. And if you really don't know, then you can keep it. This isn't about getting rid of everything. Nobody wants you to throw everything away. We just want you to make space to enjoy the things that really matter. And there's no proper, perfect way. Like, if anyone tells you there's a perfect way to clean a house, I would love to meet with them, because I have not found it in 22 years. And it shouldn't be pretty. It's supposed to be ugly. You're supposed to cry. You're supposed to laugh. Like, all of those feelings and emotions, because there is love behind all of these items, and you're deciding to let go of them or keep them. It's going to be hard. It's going to be messy every time.
Hey, Matt, let's pivot there to some questions that have come in, and folks, if you have more, please. So one thing I would like to point out, I'll start it and you can jump in. The question is about getting rid of things and not getting rid of things that might have value, financial value, market value. So I would like to just start with, and I'm going to put into the chat our most recent article post. One thing that we decided to do at Artifacts, we are not a marketplace, right? We are a place to capture the stories behind the objects. But at the same time, we realized that there was a lot of interest in understanding how much is something worth? And, to Heather's point, when her mother passed away, like, what if something's valuable and we don't know? This question comes up a lot. So what happens at Artifacts is, once you create your artifact, you get a button. It says, what's it worth? And, I didn't grow up knowing about valuations and appraisals. This was just not a part of our family life. This just wasn't. So now you can click what's it worth, and it will send your artifact over to Heritage Auctions up in Dallas, the largest collectible auctions house in the United States. And they will provide you a free valuation. They'll actually attach it right to your artifact. So it doesn't get lost in email. It doesn't float out in the cloud. It's attached to your artifact. That gives you a data point. And we did that for a couple of reasons. One, again, like I said, not everybody even is aware about valuations and appraisals. And the second reason is that we had encountered stories of folks who were taken advantage of. Someone comes in and says, oh, that's not worth anything. Let me pay $100. I'll get rid of it for you.
Totally.
So this lets you kind of cross-validate, is that right or not? There are one other mechanism I'll mention, and then let Matt take it over, is the Keys Guild out of Dallas. So they're collectibles experts, and they provide the people that go through the training are called Keys, and they will come in and they'll say, that stamp collection, I'm glad you love it, because, it's sentimental. But, this coin collection, that's amazing. And here is the best auction house or the best outlet to sell it where you'll get top dollar. So they'll come help you go through things. Matt, what are some other resources you would recommend on this?
Well, first I give a tip. If the person coming to tell you what it's worth tries to buy it, they're not good at their job. They should never make an offer on your item, because they're not going to give you they're not going to tell you what it's actually worth. For me, the big items, I actually think that's a great tool. Like, that the Keys Guild is what they're talking about, Sharon. You're asking the Keys Guild. I've just gotten connected with them. They seem pretty legit. I like them, easy to use. At the end of the day, you've got to find a trusted source online that is going to actually give you a fair, independent, itemized cost of what your item is worth. Now, if you don't have time for all of that, and if you go to my book, actually, you go to either mylegacylist.com or go to IamMattPaxton.com. In the resources section of both, actually just go to IamMattPaxton.com. If you go and hit resources, you'll actually see the entire resource section from my book is in there, and it'll go through all the different people. You just click right on it and it'll take you to the site that tells you all the different auction houses I like. If it's a big item, I get it to an auction house, because at the end of the day, so if one person is interested in it, well, I mean, that just means you're not going to make a lot of money. But if two people are interested in it, now you got a sale, all right? And so I'm all about auctions. I love them, but they got to be online. If they're in the house, if they're just in your house and it's only foot traffic, then it's only going to be local people. And what we found over my career is that if you're in Arlington, Washington, D.C., and it's a local, really, a really well-known auction house, that's great and all, but like the same people live in the same neighborhood. They have the same furniture, they have the same china, they have the same likes, like they all grew up together. And you're not going to get a really high bid on that. And no one shows up thinking like, hey, let me overpay for this, right? Like everyone shows up, and estates have just turned into like inside yard sales. And so I just think it's really important. Get it on an online auction. There's a couple good ones out there, but make sure you trust them. Make sure they're online. And if you're selling it yourself, I mean, and it's under $100, check out. I actually love Facebook Marketplace. I mean, Facebook Marketplace is a great place to sell things because you know the person that's buying it. You see them. You can check them out. You know they're legit, and you can pretty quickly see what it's worth. If everybody jumps on it, well, you listed it too. You'll know in 30 seconds if that thing's not priced high enough, right? And you'll know in 3 days, and in 12 hours if it's priced too high. I mean, I think people have to understand something's only worth what an independent third party is willing to give you. It doesn't matter what you pay for it. It doesn't matter what you think it's worth. It doesn't matter what your dad said. It's only worth what an independent third party will pay.
Matt, we have a question in the chat.
Yeah.
It's related. Do you recommend specific donation options? Now, I know that you have a relationship with Goodwill, so we'll acknowledge that up front.
Okay, so I am Goodwill's national spokesperson. That being said, I want you to find a place that you feel connected with. I want you to find a place that has the same mission that you have. I'm big on donation anywhere. I am really big on donation because I will tell you, if your goal is to clear out a house, the cheapest way to do it is through donation, right? And you will almost never be really stoked about how much you get an item when you sell it. All right, the number I talk about is about 10%. If you think that item's worth $100, you'd be lucky to get $10. Now I'm speaking generally across the board. I'm not saying about specific items. Beanie Babies, you will not get $10. I'm gonna tell you that right now. All right, like a lot of the Yardro collections. There's a lot of collections that are out there. Longaberger baskets, can't give them away. Okay, like in a Longaberger basket filled with Beanie Babies, you're not gonna get a whole lot of money with that. Okay, but if you do, donating them, there you go. Okay, I'm glad you brought that up. My gosh, did you know I was gonna say? At the end of the day, you will always be happy with giving things away. The joy that you receive from giving is big. And I give till it hurts. I mean, I really believe that that's the equation. I find happiness and joy. I'm really big into giving. But you've got to find the mission that works for you. I chose Goodwill because of their workforce development. They put a lot of people that I used to employ. They put a lot of hardworking men and women that can't get jobs. They give them a second chance and they get them jobs. And so that's why I chose them. I don't care what your mission is. Just find the one that you love because you're going to want to give more to it. And I think that's what's important. I'm really, really big into donation, more than selling. I promise you. Because what happens in selling is both situations, you have already decided you do not want the item. You have told yourself, I'm done. I don't want it. Let's get it out of the house. And then you think that this thing is mythically worth $100, right? And then someone offers you $6 and now you are upset. They don't know my father. My father gave me that. That is worth $200. You've now created this whole argument in your brain that is not real. You're arguing with a mythical fake person, right? That gave you that you don't know. They gave you a low offer. And now you're upset and you're going to keep it because that offer is offensive. And that's silly. You already 20 minutes ago you would have given it away for free. Why are you upset now that someone's only offering you $6? It's a waste of energy. It creates a lot of negative energy. Just give the thing away.
And Matt,
unless you need it. Yeah.
Agree. Don't give her things you need.
If you need the money. I'm sorry, this is important. Some people need
yes.
to sell. And that is okay. If you need every penny in this house, then you need to work with professional auctioneer. You need to work with professional auction house.
Yeah, that goes to your motivation.
What's your why? Back to the why. Yeah.
Exactly.
And there's nothing wrong. If you need the money, then just admit it and bring in a professional. They're going to take 40%, but I promise you, at the end of the day, your 60% will be bigger than 100% if you sell it yourself.
Absolutely. I wanted to, Hazel just mentioned foster care initiatives, and that's actually why I had this. I was thinking about, I had this Care Bear. It's a Care Bear penguin. I don't know, a friend. But I was thinking about giving it to the dog, but I discovered, I'm a cyclist, and there is a stuffed animal rescue hospital in Austin, Texas, where I live, that I cycle by all the time. And they will repair and they will clean and they will bring these to foster care homes, shelters, like you name it. And it's about getting creative and finding things in your community that you can support, as you said. Where's your mission? How can you help your community?
So a great example, I found it, people were always frustrated with China. Like they're like, I can't sell my China. It's not worth anything. Nobody wants it. And then we started donating it to children's art projects, and the kids are breaking it up for mosaics and using it as art supplies. And I had a lady, she's like, oh man, that's awesome. Like they're gonna, like, okay, great. She was a teacher, she was an art teacher, actually, crazy enough. She's like, what? Oh my god, I didn't think about this. And so for her, it took a negative and made it real positive really quick.
Yeah, we love hearing those stories. Thanks, Matt. That's awesome. Do you have any, speaking of like kind of stories and experiences, anything that strikes you as either the most surprising or the most just like awe-inspiring you've worked with so many people, you've been in so many different homes, you've heard so many stories, like what, like kind of to end on a really happy, positive note, like what is that one or two that you walked away being like, wow, that made my day. I'm so happy.
Well, one happened I've just finished filming season 4 of Legacy List. I cannot tell you this one. You have to just watch in February. But oh my God, I mean, we were in tears. It was unbelievable. I'll say that. For the most part, yeah, I'll tell you one. Actually, the very first episode was really cool. We were still figuring out the show. You know, we were filming it with this lady up the street, and she was awesome. We found a 44-star flag in the attic, and she's like, do you know anything about this? I was like, no. And of course, it's like midnight, and we all are like, 44. Like, what are the other 6, right? And we start going through it. It's like, okay, Oklahoma, obviously Hawaii and California. And then most of us in the room are kind of like, you lost me there. I don't know the other 4, And so we're like trying to figure out which 6 states it was. And oh my gosh, I'm sorry, guys. I have a lot of children. I'm sorry. And we, sorry. So she goes, I need you to tell me more about it. So I end up calling my buddy at Smithsonian, and he's like, dude, they only made like 3 of those, or like 4 of those. And he's like, it was 1889. We started, and so we end up getting museums involved. They tell us pretty quick. They're like, yeah, man, it was her grandfather. So this lady was 80. Her name was Linus, amazing lady, mid-80s. Her grandfather was a train conductor the day Utah became a state. He drove all the politicians to Utah, to Salt Lake City in the train, and they put one on his train. And at the end of the ceremony, he just took it off the train and put it in his trunk, his steamer trunk at his house later that night. And me and my guys found it 120 years later in Delaware in the attic. And it was like, this is real history. Like, oh my God. And I mean, I got to hold something this year. We found something from the moon, man. Something that is like something from space. I got to hold it because it was in this guy's garage. Like, it was crazy. I mean, just crazy. So like, now not everybody's, I get excited, you can tell. Not everybody has something from the moon, and not everybody has a 44-star flag, but everybody has a grandma. Everybody has someone that you loved, and you should get as excited as I get about whatever you're finding, whether it's grandma's purse or, we have this thing we call hot grandma. There's always a really good looking picture of grandma when she was like 18. Like and bear with me, ladies. This will go somewhere good. Grandma, everyone looks at grandma right now as the little old lady in the corner holding her, putting her arms through the purse so that someone in the family doesn't steal her purse, right? But at the end of the day, grandma was probably a babe and kind of a badass, at one point. And it's pretty typical. She's always smoking a cigarette, standing near like a fighter jet or pilot of some kind. And it's always around the war. And she's smoking a cigarette, wearing a skirt that's a little shorter than it should be. And it's really, really just, I love them. And it makes me so much joy when I'm able to show the family, like, oh yeah, this is your grandma. This woman right here. And they would say, Grandma was hot. I said, no, Grandma is hot. Grandma's awesome. And I get really excited. I'm like, this is so cool. It's like, that's the excitement I want people to have. And I think that's one thing I like working with you guys. Like, sometimes strangers get more excited about your stories than you do. And that's something really cool about this tool, because you can really get, people get hyped up. I mean, I'll do this for 4 more hours if you guys want to. I get super excited about, stories and stuff. But at the end of the day, you got to tell those. If you get online and you tell those stories, people will get super excited. And it may not be you, it might be your kid. I don't care what it is, but there's no way, I can guarantee you, if you don't fill these things out, no one's going to hear the stories. But if you spend the time to get these items out, a couple things will happen. One, it's going to create conversations in the family, always. And then more importantly, you're going to find out, so many people say to me, my kids don't want my stuff. My kids don't want my stuff. They don't know the stories. If you tell the stories, someone in the family is going to want some of that stuff. Mm-hmm. And you're going to hear a story from them about another item that they want. And so just tell the stories. Yeah. So Hazel just wrote, if you don't tell the stories, who will? You got to tell the stories. I promise you the rest will figure it out. The items will land with the people they need to be. And I'll be a little bit of a commercial for y'all right here. They didn't ask me to do this, but this is the easiest daggone tool to do it in. And I love it. And that's why I started using it. And it took me, they could tell me to the minute. I signed up, and it probably still took me a month or two to actually start filling to Artifact. I signed up, I got all excited, I put one item in, and then I didn't look at it for a month. And then I got on it. And now I'm really excited about it. And I got like 6 more things I'm putting up this week. Get in there, y'all, and just if you fill out your first one, you'll be surprised how much you enjoy it. It's really, really fun.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Matt. I think we have time for one more question. We'll make it really short, but actually there's 2 questions that came in during chat when you were talking. Both relate to the same kind of topic at hand. What happens if you've got an item that either you're moving or downsizing, you may not have an immediate need for, but you think you may need it or you may want it down the road. And the other kind of the addition to that, or the addendum, is what happens if you have an item, family heirloom, maybe a baptismal gown or something from, turn of the century, you still have it. What are you supposed to do with this? Like, what do you do with those items, or what would you recommend doing if you're not too sure?
Yeah, the gowns and the wedding dresses. To me, artifact that all day long. I mean, the artifact's more important than the actual item. The item's just going to decay. So you need to get the artifact on there and have other people tell the stories with it. Include those. We have found some hospitals will actually accept the old gowns, and they'll use them as they'll use them for something for kids. And there's actually, if you go to my resources sections on my legacy list, there are some resources for that. I think that is clothing will not last forever, no matter how well you treat it. So, that item more than any, you need to artifact and get pictures of the people wearing it when it was at its prime. Like, you can really tell the full story of that item. Uniforms is another one, like war uniforms. Like, they're great and all, and they're really respectful. And I don't want to be disrespectful, but like, no one's gonna wear that ever again, And do you really gonna You're not none of us are curators at museums. At some point, donate it to the proper places for the war memorabilia. But at the end of the day, man, just take the pictures, artifact it, and get rid of it.
Matt, I hate to say it's top of the hour and we have to let people go, but you did
tell talk all night. Keep going. Yeah.
That you were really sad that no one has shared any of their artifacts with you. So we are going to close with a little bit of a challenge for folks. So whoever creates a new artifact, a real one, don't say test, a real one, and shares it with tonight's speaker, Mr. Matt Paxton. The first one who does it, we're going to send you an Artie Unlimited bundle that will include a 30-minute session with Heather and I to help you with all of your very specific Q&A questions, because even today we just got a whole bunch of them and they're delightful. So if we can help you get started, share your artifact with Matt Paxton, and he'll tell us who the winner is.
I'm gonna put
Matt, it's
right
been
now.
A pleasure.
Guys, thank you so much.
They have to go create it now. They haven't made it yet. It's a new artifact. So Matt, thank you so much for doing this. We really appreciate it. And if you haven't checked out our article from yesterday online, 15 decluttering targets, there's some great tips from Matt in there that he contributed. And we'll see you next week. We'll announce our next speaker, who's going to be joining us on Sunday. We'll send it out in our regular newsletter. And so we appreciate your time, everybody.
Thank you, everybody. Good to see people here. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Good night, everyone.